All right, good morning. Good morning to those who have joined. We're going to give it about another minute or two to let others join, and then we'll get started. Thanks so much for tuning in with us today. All righty, I think we have quite a few people in attendance here, so we can go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining today. If this is your first time joining with us, my name is Latoya Taylor. I'm a manager here at SIE Group, and we're here to kick off round two of our webinar series. If you thought spring was insightful, summer is bringing the real heat today. So I would like to take this opportunity to again welcome those. I think a few more of you guys just joined in. My name is Latoya Taylor. Um, I'm a manager here at SIE Group, and I'm excited to lead today's discussion. Summer's here, and it's heating up. SBOM smarts for federal and commercial resilience. Cyber threats don't take summers off, and neither do we. As the temps rise, so do the stakes when it comes to securing our digital environments. And so that's why today we're turning up the volume on SBOMs, those software bill of materials that are changing the game in cybersecurity. At SIE, I lead teams focused on on IT asset management, software asset management, and cybersecurity strategy. And our goal is to equip federal agencies with the tools and tactics to be proactive, compliant, and resilient in a climate that demands nothing less. So as you can tell by our theme, I love summer. I love it because it's filled with pool parties and barbecues, but this is also a season of software cleanups, risk audits, and making sure our environments don't melt under pressure. So today you can think of this as your digital summer maintenance session, tossing out expired vulnerabilities and locking in tools that keep your organization protected. And the MVP of the toolkit is Eracent's SBOM Manager. We're thrilled to be joined again today by Terry Divelbliss, who's the Senior VP at Eracent, and he brings decades of experience across ITAM, SAM, and cyber solutions. Also heating things up today are SIE's very own rock stars, Miss Melissa Golden and Stephanie Pepe, who will be driving the discussion alongside Terry. So let's kick things off with a few intros. I'll turn it over to you, Terry.
Okay, very good. Good morning, everybody. I'm Terry Divelbliss. I'm the head of marketing at Eracent, but I've been very, very involved in our product management teams and especially customer project management in my 23 years with the company. And over the past 2 years, I've been fortunate to add SBOM specialist to my list of roles.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Golden. I'm a senior ITAM technical specialist here at SIE. My background is in IT engineering and system architecture, and I focus on building management strategies that are practical, secure, and aligned to agency goals.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Pepe. I'm a senior specialist at SIE. I have over 10 years of experience in SAM and license compliance. I specialize in helping clients optimize their software environment, and I am excited to dig into how SBOMs can level up your supply chain security today.
And let me unmute myself. Thank you for those intros. And just a few housekeeping rules before we dive in. There's a few notes here on the screen that'll help us all get the most out of today's session. Please be advised that this webinar is being recorded, and you can also watch it anytime after. Use the chat Q&A to drop your questions. We'll get to them later. And just so that we can continue on with the conversation, everyone is muted for clarity, but don't be shy in the chat. We definitely want to hear all of your questions today. And if you do experience any technical issues, we've got your back. We have some crew behind the scenes working to answer any of those questions you may have. So just drop those in the chat if you experience any audio issues throughout the presentation. All right, next slide. Wonderful. We've got an agenda that is full of everything that you need to know about SBOMs. Think of it as a full course summer meal, We'll go through what an SBOM is, and then we'll go through cybersecurity implications for federal agencies, and then we'll take a look at SBOMs in commercial industries. We'll give a spotlight on Eracent's SBOM manager tool, and give you a real-world case study, and then we'll have time for Q&A, and then the final takeaways on how to keep cool under cyber pressure. Let's jump in. So if you all did not tune in to our last webinar session, we did want to just pause and let you guys just digest this slide here and know exactly what an SBOM is. So think of an SBOM as your software's ingredient label. Okay, so SBOM, of course, stands for Software Bill of Material. It's going to be a very detailed inventory or ingredient list of all the components in the piece of software. So you know what's in there, who made it, and whether it could spoil your system or not. It also allows agencies to track and verify what's inside your software applications. And there's also a hardware bill of material, or an HBOM, as well. And we're seeing growing interest in those to track physical components as well. So without an SBOM, organizations lack visibility into what's running in their environments. So Terry, could you walk us through exactly how SBOMs and HBOMs help organizations stay secure and compliant?
Sure, absolutely, Latoya. That's it's a tall order, but let's go ahead and jump in with that. So as Latoya did state, your software bill of materials is essentially an ingredients list of all of your open source libraries that are out there, as well as the components that are part of a compiled software application. So the SBOMs themselves really aren't new. They've been used for years by application development teams to really spot check their code as they go along. And developers, go in, they code, and then periodically an SBOM gets generated, and then it gets analyzed. If everything looks good, development continues, and you throw that particular SBOM away, because as soon as somebody types in the next set of code, it's no longer relevant. However, SBOM use for cybersecurity, that's something that's relatively new. And there's really three primary factors where an SBOM does give you some critical information. The first one is around vulnerabilities. So traditionally, vulnerability tools, they've really detected things and worked at the application or the product level. You would know that this product or version or edition has a potential vulnerability. NIST and other organizations do provide vulnerability information about the products, the versions, and the editions, and that's generally worked well. But if you think back to 2020, a whole lot of organizations got clobbered with the infamous Log4j and SolarWinds hack. And those vulnerabilities were at the open source library and component level, and nobody was really expecting that. So, there's an analogy that I use pretty regularly in this situation. Let's say that your organization builds a new facility. So you found a gated, secure complex. Your new facility has state-of-the-art locks. You put on alarms, bars over the windows. You have cameras and everything you could think of that keeps the bad guys out. However, somebody then goes into the building and feeling all safe and secure and smug, but they walk down to the basement and there's a door under the steps. And they open up the door and, there's Log4j in there. So nobody was even looking for that. But the hackers, they already knew that that was a viable attack point and they jumped on it. Nobody saw that coming, really. At least nobody would admit it. Okay, the second factor really that we're looking at now is obsolescence around the code. So you really want to ensure that the applications that you're using, whether you develop them in-house or you've bought them from third-party vendors, you want to make sure they use code that's relatively recent and very well maintained. So several of us that are on this call as panelists were at a presentation from CISO last year, and we heard that there was one real-world use case out there where there was a major service management vendor, not to be named, that was providing network control applications that still utilize libraries from 2002 and 2003. So that doesn't mean that those libraries actually were hacked, but that's old code, and it's probably not inspected and analyzed very often. So the chance of something happening is much higher when you're working with obsolete code. So vulnerabilities, obsolete code, and then the final factor is licensing risk. So this is different than the licensing risk that we're used to in the software asset management world, where your primary risk there is publisher audits and fines and other financial penalties. This is different. In this case, your license risk really revolves around restrictions on how the code can be used. So the most desirable license type that you want your app dev teams to use or have within code that you're buying is permissive. When you have permissive licensing, your developers can change the code. They can put the code into any type of application, including anything that they're going to share or sell and monetize. And there are really very few, if any, restrictions on how that code can be used. On the other hand, there are some very restrictive license types out there, copyleft, strong copyleft, and other variants of that. And in those cases, your developers are not allowed to change the code. They can't use it in any applications they're going to be monetizing or even sharing. And many times, there are rules on how the author of the code needs to be credited. So they want to make sure that I wrote this, years ago. If any of those terms are violated, the author can sue you. They can sue any of the others who are using your application. They can actually confiscate your application and share it freely. And there are other undesirable outcomes out there that really put your organization's IP at risk. So vulnerabilities, code obsolescence, and license type risk are the three main things that SBOMs will help you with. Okay.
Thank you for that, Terry. We did have another question. So does the SBOM, just really quickly, I just wanted to make sure, does the SBOM manager detect or generate these SBOMs for the SBOM manager tool, or is it provided by the OEM?
It's typically the license, the SBOMs are typically provided by the OEMs, the publishers, or even your in-house application development teams. An SBOM manager takes those, ingests the SBOMs and breaks down the components in them, and then does analysis. And we'll talk about that a lot more moving forward. But typically, you're getting the SBOMs directly from the publishers from whom you're buying their application.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So on this slide here, we do want to kind of step into the next segment of our presentation where we talk about the cybersecurity implications for federal agencies. So as you know, cyber threats are evolving, and federal agencies must stay ahead. And SBOMs play a critical role in securing these software supply chains. So SBOMs support Executive Order 14028. It also supports NIST 800-218 and OMB memos like M-22-18. And here's why they matter. There's the rapid incident response. It supports zero trust architecture and enables real-time integrity checks um, as well.
So, Latoya, just, as a quick summary for those who aren't aware, Executive Order 14028 was introduced by former President Biden, and it was the first legislation that brought SBOMs to the forefront. And what that executive order stated was it required any software developer or publisher who wants to supply the US government or DoD agencies, they need to provide an SBOM for their products. And after about 3 years now, a growing number of publishers are complying with this order. So it's not really a surprise to them at this point. If you do ask for one or demand it, you're typically going to be able to get that, and most publishers are complying.
Terry, how do standards like SPDX and Cyclone DX relate to compliance?
Okay. Each of these standards, each of the three main standards for SBOMs now, the SPDX, Cyclone DX, or SWID, just like the ISO-2 tags, each of these structures the SBOMs in a format that meets the government mandates, and it supports secure and scalable sharing. No matter how you're utilizing them, people will know what to expect, and from a machine readable standpoint as well. It is consistency.
Quick question, Terry. And what about vulnerability databases like CVE, CVSS, and NVD?
Yep, absolutely. The SBOM tools, whether they're from Eracent or other vendors, they will integrate directly with these trusted source databases that provide information globally. So they integrate with those databases. So any organization, you can instantly cross-reference the vulnerabilities that you do have in your stack.
Thank you.
Awesome. So Terry, we've been talking about how SBOMs support compliance, and the executive order landscape has been evolving. So I know you mentioned, briefly that these executive orders were, come out and everything, but can you really break down what's actually changing under these new updates?
Sure. No, absolutely. The new executive orders, and as they've evolved, the existing ones or new ones are coming out. It's really about streamlining and strengthening the processes, and these changes are pretty significant. A lot of it's been on cutting red tape. So on the elimination side of things, we're seeing numerous bureaucratic hurdles being removed, things that have kind of impeded adoption of SBOMs. First, there were some machine readable attestation or confirmation, if you will, checking, verifying. The attestation mandates are gone. That's also quite the tongue twister of a word to say it multiple times, but the machine readable attestation mandates are gone now. Secondly, CISA has a centralized attestation repository out there. That's been eliminated, so that takes away a major bottleneck. And third, just overall around the whole, all the SBOM processes in general, we're moving away from rigid checklist-driven processes, and those were, again, slowing everybody down. There was very little flexibility. There were things that were deemed to be maybe redundant or not necessary, and that's really being freed up now. But really, here's the key. While they're removing the bureaucracy in those processes, they're strengthening the security requirements. There's a shift to flexible agency-level judgments that are aligned with SSDF 2.0. So they give a little bit more autonomy and trust and flexibility down to the agency level. Okay.
Just jumping in again quickly, Terry, what does this mean for actual implementation timelines?
There are a couple dates that are coming up pretty quickly for the things I just talked about. On August 1st of 2025, about 6 weeks away from now, there's a NIST consortium that's being formed. So NIST consortium formation, August 1st. And then later in the year, December 1st, there are going to be SSDF updates and PQC lists that are added. And then probably the biggest one of all of these on January 4th, 2027, there's an IoT trust mark set of requirements, and those will be kicking in as well. So that's January of 2027 around IoT trust mark.
Terry, question, and for the agency specifically?
So the agencies themselves, as I mentioned, have a little bit more autonomy now and flexibility, but they do have some critical new requirements that are coming up. So the IoT security, as I'd mentioned a minute ago, it really requires that there's a U.S. cyber trust mark applied to IoT devices and the SBOMs around those in January 2027. So it's a trust mark that's, I get stamp of approval, if you will, or a stamp that you can trust, what you're seeing here. The encryption standards mandate that TLS 1.3 or newer is utilized by January 2030. So it's hard to believe looking out that far, but clearly planning is in place. And then we're also seeing SSDF updates that require industry consortium input, as I mentioned, by August of 2025, and enhanced security that focuses on BGP routing protection and vulnerability first AI development. So a lot of different things here that agencies are going to have to do their homework on, look at how we're going to implement them. I think you're going to see different governing bodies and best practices bodies giving recommendations and guidance and helping push these into place.
Awesome.
And the bottom line, I'm sorry, the bottom line, sorry to interrupt back there, but while the process is getting more flexible, the security bar is actually being raised by doing this. So organizations really do need to prepare now, especially in this case, some of these are talking 2027, 2030. Several of these are 2025 deadlines, and those are going to come up real quickly.
They are. Yes. Thank you for all of that information, Terry.
Sure.
I did want to do just a quick poll while we have a few folks on the call. If you are in a government agency, have you all started to prepare now, especially for those upcoming deadlines, 6 weeks away in August? If not, yes, we can definitely help you to get started and get organized on that front, because we definitely want you to be ready so that you don't have to get ready. You got to stay ready so you don't have to get ready, right? So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about SBOMs in commercial industries. They are becoming increasingly vital in commercial industries, these SBOMs. And some of those industries include healthcare, finance, critical infrastructure, and manufacturing. And we're seeing adoption accelerate across these multiple sectors. And it's not just about compliance anymore. Terry, can you walk us through what's happening in the commercial world?
Sure, absolutely. There's a lot happening. So as obviously SBOMs were brought to the forefront for federal and DoD in the US, but they're becoming very increasingly vital across multiple commercial industries. Healthcare is a big one. Finance is probably the leader in the commercial side of things, critical infrastructure, and in manufacturing as well. And so what's really driving across these sectors is that they handle sensitive data. They always rely on complex software ecosystems. And like anybody else, those face the rise in cybersecurity threats, without a doubt. So from Eracent's standpoint and what we've been seeing, working with our own customers, there's 3 key areas where there's a major impact. So in critical infrastructure protection, that's huge right now. So energy, transportation, water systems, you can even think of things going on in world situations and war and crises and threats right now. Those can be increasingly targeted by cyber criminals. So this will be probably a tremendous time to test what's out there. SBOMs enhance visibility into your supply chain dependencies, and that's really critical when you're talking about keeping the lights on or keeping the water flowing in other forms of infrastructure like that. So critical infrastructure, a huge driver. Software supply chain resilience, that really affects everybody, every organization out there. So organizations in basically every industry, you do rely on open source and third-party software. By adopting SBOMs and managing them, every company can identify any untrusted or vulnerable components well ahead of when they might become a problem. And finally, zero trust and security compliance. A lot of private organizations are following government lead and they're shifting to zero trust security models. And the SBOMs align perfectly with the zero trust principles. They ensure continuous software integrity monitoring and the real-time vulnerability detection.
And what about specific industry requirements?
Okay, good question. So different sectors, they're adapting to SBOM usage in pretty fascinating ways. So the software vendors, they're making a fundamental shift here to secure by design tooling that is based on SSDF 2.0. It's really not just about compliance and catching up and being forced to supply SBOMs. It's about really building security into their development processes, really from day one. It's taking a whole different approach that supports this. The IoT device manufacturers, they have a critical deadline approaching, as I mentioned. They need to really prepare for federal cyber trust label compliance, and that's the trust mark. This is huge for any company selling connected devices, and they're used across so many industries, obviously. Cloud services providers, they're getting ahead of the curve here because they're supporting the PQC ready encryption and then the TLS 1.3 standards as well. So they're preparing for a post-quantum world before it comes mandatory. So thinking ahead, doing it the right way. And finally, your AI and ML vendors. And this one's where it really gets interesting because they're adopting vulnerability management and rapid patching processes for their tools because AI systems are becoming, they're also becoming critical digital infrastructure that supports so many other processes out there.
Wow. So the key takeaway at the bottom of the slide just really captures everything that's happening here, doesn't it, Terry?
Exactly. So your SBOMs remain essential for cybersecurity compliance and also for cybersecurity operations across every one of these sectors that we talked about. But what's fairly exciting is that the new executive order actually streamlines the implementation of these because it removes the bureaucratic attestation requirements that you had, and it adds stronger security mandates for IoT, for encryption, and for AI systems. So it's making compliance easier to achieve, and it's also making security requirements a lot more robust. And that's pretty much exactly what the industry needed.
Perfect. So for all of you industry folks out there, whether you're running a hospital, whether you're managing a power grid, or developing the next AI breakthrough, the message is clear. SBOMs aren't just a government thing anymore. They're becoming the foundation of trust across every industry, and that takes security seriously. That takes security seriously. Sorry, cannot get my words out this morning. But I'm so excited to just share all of this news because the commercial sector is proving that SBOMs work at scale and they're driving innovation in how we think about software security. Whether it's saving lives or protecting dollars, you need to know what's running under the hood for sure.
Okay. All right. So let's actually talk a little bit more specifically then about Eracent's SBOM Manager. This is something where I could spend my own complete 1 hour webinar session, just talking through it. But let's go ahead and just talk about it at a high level and how it's supporting all the things that we've talked about up to this point. So there are a number of open source tools out there like SIFT and others that are very good at what they do for creating SBOMs and pulling all the info together. But Eracent's SBOM Manager itself, we really bring everything required for analysis and reporting together in one secure platform. So it really is centralized SBOM management as a whole. There's a lot of real-time risk awareness and alerting immediately. There's integration with other DevSec and Ops tools that are out there to work with it, either to bring SBOM information in or to utilize SBOM results and analysis in broader security platforms. And there's a lot of automated compliance workflows as well.
Terry, how do most orgs get started?
One of them is really to take a baseline inventory. What are my applications that I have in my organization? What do we have? Everything. And for those, which ones have SBOMs available today? That gives you a good starting point to build, hone, and basically refine your processes. You can build your SBOM practices at this point into procurement. Can we get SBOMs before we even bring a new product in to verify and test that they're okay? You want to build it into your patching and updating processes. If this reporting and vulnerability information comes back, what do we do with it? And then you want to build it into your broader risk programs as well. So you really need to think long term, but you do have that starting point of what applications and SBOMs do I have today? Let's start with real world and go from there.
Terry, how often should SBOMs be updated?
Basically, anytime your software changes. So not only during the development cycle, but anytime a new commercial release is made, anytime a new patch comes out, anything with new code, you want to be updating that SBOM so that you, if you're an application development organization, you want to know that what I'm providing to my users out there is good. And as a user bringing that software in before you put it on your servers or in the cloud, you want to make sure that, yes, I can trust the code that's been given to me, as a new application or a new version or a patch.
One more question, Terry. Does the SBOM manager detect or generate the software bill of materials, or is it provided by the OEM?
That's real similar to an earlier question. I can go into a little bit more here. Typically, it's provided by the OEM that you're buying from, as I mentioned, or your internal development teams. It's not created natively by SBOM Manager today. Once it's uploaded into SBOM Manager, whether it comes in they're JSON files is what they are, but they come in those standard formats that I mentioned, like Cyclone DX, SPDX, or SWID. The SBOM comes into the tool and is basically deconstructed. We identify what libraries, what components are in here, and we, like a component like Log4j, we index those one time and put it in the library, in the repository, and then it's linked to every product that Log4j or any other library or component came in with. So you have this index of components and libraries and all the products and SBOMs that they tie to. SBOM Manager also, one of the nice things about it is we do a lot of error checking. We can tell when an SBOM comes in, well, is there something in here that's missing or inconsistent with the last time we've seen this component in earlier SBOMs? We can fill in those blanks or tell you we automatically know that it doesn't have a license type listed, but we know that this is a permissive or Apache 2.0 or whatever the license type is. We'll fill that in. And we're able to show you in the tool what's the original version and what is the corrected and revised version, so you can see what it is that SBOM Manager put it in. And the nice thing about SBOM Manager, it gives you that fast, accurate indexing and mapping of those components to their associated products. And coming full circle on the question, we ingest and refine the SBOMs in Eracent SBOM Manager, and it doesn't create them. And you're using what has been given to you by a trusted source in the publisher or application dev team. There's a big value to that.
Perfect. Before we jump into the case study, I just wanted to check to see if there were any questions about that SBOM Manager tool. I know it's just one slide and Terry can talk all day about it, but just wanted to make sure we got all those questions answered before we move on. All righty. So we are now going to look at a real world example that's happening right now and affecting every defense contractor in the room. Terry, can you tell us about Pentagon's software fast track initiative? This isn't theoretical anymore, is it?
LIFT initiative went live on June 1st. and it's already transforming how military software gets improved. This is one of the things that was kind of mind-blowing that they've made this kind of fundamental change. It's really the Pentagon's most ambitious software modernization effort that they've ever done. So, what's revolutionary about it? They completely replaced their old risk management framework. They had mountains of paperwork, and it would take literally months of human reviews to get something approved and put onto the list. Now they have an AI-powered system that evaluates software against 12 distinct risk characteristics. And you can imagine how that's accelerated that process.
So what does this mean for vendors practically?
Really, it's a complete game changer because the vendors now, they submit a triple SBOM requirement. So production environment SBOM is one. The sandbox environment SBOM is another one. And then there's a third-party verified SBOM as well. So there's really three. It's triplicate. I guess that's still the government way, but so they can do it that way. And all of that data gets fed into the DoD's Enterprise Mission Assurance Support Service System. So there's another mouthful. So that's the Enterprise Mission Assurance Support Service System. And, putting that in from that standpoint. And then, here's the real kicker about that. Is the acting DoD Chief Information Officer, Katie Arrington. She had said, if everything meets the requirements for a digital ATO, we don't have to wait on a human to review it. So we're talking about software approvals going from literally months to potentially just hours. So that's crazy. And as Eracent is a software vendor, we love hearing that as well. When we're going in and talking to these agencies as well. That's a big deal for us, but it's certainly a big deal for the agencies, wanting, in any commercial organizations when they get to this point as well, who want to acquire and procure and bring in and implement products that's going to really accelerate that timeline.
Terry, what's the impact been so far?
Okay. Industry's kind of splitting into two camps right now that you can see. Your vendors who have mature DevSec and Ops practices in place, and the ones who are already doing automated SBOM generation, they're really sailing right through these new AI-powered approvals. And companies that are really still relying on the manual processes are really, they're scrambling and they're playing catch up, while their competitors are going to start winning more and more of the contracts.
And this is exactly what we mean when we say SBOMs aren't just about compliance anymore. They're about the competitive advantage that you're going to have over other people who are, not as hip to this new AI-powered initiative. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, what's really significant about that, and I alluded to this a moment ago, what starts out as a DoD requirement today, often becomes a commercial standard tomorrow. So the AI-powered SBOM-centric approach to software security assessment, you're going to see that model pretty much spread across government agencies, and then it's going to roll into and be adopted by the private sector.
Exactly. So in this case study, we proved that the Pentagon uses SBOMs to, and they can use them to power automated AI-driven security at scale. So if it works for defending our nation's military systems, imagine what it can do for your organization's security posture. Alrighty. So we are now at the time for our questions and answers. We're going to have a quick just Q&A roundtable first, and then we can definitely open it up to those who have joined to ask their questions.
Okay, bring them on.
Terry, can SBOMs prevent attacks?
The SBOMs by themselves don't stop threats. But what they do is the information they provide and the tools that analyze them, they're going to help you spot and remove vulnerable components, well before any damage can be done. And that's their biggest role.
Terry, will SBOMs become mandatory across industries?
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing it already with healthcare and finance and infrastructure. They're already moving there. And once that value is shown and proven, others are absolutely going to follow.
Okay, and one more question for me. How are AI and automation changing SBOMs?
Very, very relevant. And we're seeing it even with the work that the Eracent SBOM development team is doing. The SBOMs themselves, they're really helping improve detection. They're helping, especially with dependency mapping of how systems and infrastructure fit together with the different applications where they're running and so forth, and how things fit together within the SBOM. So detection, the dependency mapping, and then just the real-time threat analysis. There's a lot of information they can rely on from previous attacks, even the methodology that we provide to correct and fill in the gaps in SBOMs, things like that. I mean, it brings those smarts to the table and gives you many more conditions that fall into play.
All right.
Any other questions on that?
Thank you.
I think we're gonna open it up now. Let's see. Have you all been utilizing the Q&A feature or the chat feature to ask your questions? You need to have at least one question from the audience. I want to know that you guys are listening, or we just did a great job and answered all of the questions that you had. I don't know. You guys tell me.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we've got a shy crowd here, but if you do think of any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Now that we have Terry here, just move on to conclusion and next steps here. So before we wrap, I do want to make sure that we stress these hot takeaways. All right. SBOMs are mission critical, okay? They are going to enhance the supply chain security, compliance, and risk mitigation. All right. They are essential across private and public sectors, and agencies must adopt SBOMs to meet federal cybersecurity mandates. And then tools like Eracent's SBOM Manager are going to make that adoption easy. They simplify SBOM integration, making compliance easier. Of course, you want that competitive advantage,
Exactly. Okay. Now I'll do my word from your sponsor here for just a moment. Got a commercial break here. So, thank you everybody. Really do appreciate you joining this session. Hope you found some things educational, and things hopefully we've highlighted some new things to take back to your own teams and present. So one final point I'm going to make about SBOM Manager. A number of platforms are out. There are a lot of cyber tools that are out there. I was just at the Gartner Cyber and Risk conference. I think Amy from SIE had joined us there 2 weeks ago. And you're in an exhibit hall and you realize there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of specialized security tools out there. And there are a number of cyber platforms out there that do offer SBOM management functionality. But a couple things about them. They can be wildly expensive. And the fact that they're so complex, you can have a really long proof of concept period. And then once you select one, then you have many months of implementation. And then, hey, now we can finally manage our SBOMs a year later. With Eracent's SBOM Manager, you can use them with any of those other bigger platform tools. But with SBOM Manager, you could go in and sign up on our website today, and you could be managing your top 10 SBOMs tomorrow, free of charge. We give you a chance to get in there. It's instant return. It's very tactical. You get results now. You don't need to spend millions of dollars and things like that to be able to use the tool and get the value immediately. So you can visit eracent.com to learn more, see more information and data sheets, and you can request that free trial. We'd love nothing more than to have you try it out or reach out to us to give you a full-on demo of the tool, how it works, and all the things I had nowhere near enough time to tell you about today. Okay, go ahead, Latoya. There you go.
Thanks, Terry, for that commercial break. And then major thanks to our behind the scenes team, Miss Lori Shrout, Miss Amy Grosso, and Adam McWayne. We see you. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for putting this lively presentation together for us. And then to our attendees, we thank you for rocking with us for round two. If this was your first time joining, we hope that you did learn something that you can take back to your organization to get organized today so that you will be walking away cooler, wiser, and ready to raise the bar on your software supply chain. I want you guys to stay sharp, stay safe, and stay ready. Whether it's spring, summer, or audit season, SBOMs keep you from getting burned. We thank you for tuning in today, and yeah, we'll see you guys real soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great day.